I have learned a lot in my adult life so far, and there are so many lessons that I wish I knew earlier. In this video, I want to talk about the advice that I would give my younger self if I had the chance to sit down and talk with him. Before we get started, I want you to know that I made the rookie error of recording with my blinds open, so at multiple times in this video, I become ghostly white for a little bit. Fortunately, I'm not good enough at editing to fix that, so anyway, on to lesson number 1. When I really think about the lessons I would want to share, there's always one that shows up before the others. It took me a very long time to understand it and even longer to accept it, but learning to take accountability for my own happiness is what really changed everything for me. The reason why is because when I was at my lowest points, I found that I was often letting circumstances or others decide how I felt. If I felt unhappy, it was either because of my past, other people, or other circumstances, and it wasn't my fault. Looking back now, I realized that all I was doing was avoiding taking responsibility for my happiness because it meant that I was to blame if I was unhappy. And that sucked. It also meant that I had the power to change, but that meant I had to actually do it. And both of those things I didn't want to do, so I avoided taking accountability. So what would I tell myself to get over this? I would tell him to stop seeing himself as a victim of his circumstances. Because once I was able to stop doing that, I started to feel free. I took back control of my emotions and I stopped relying on others or other circumstances just to feel okay. I would also make it clear that I'm not saying to just be happy, because it doesn't work like that. And it took me a lot of dedicated effort to actually think about what made me happy. And once I had a good idea of that, I had to try and take the steps towards doing those things more often. And by no means was that a quick or easy process, but just taking the accountability as a start was what shifted everything for me and allowed me to even want to change and grow. So that's lesson number 1. And if I had known this much sooner, I would have been way happier as a teenager and young adult. Moving on to lesson number 2. The second thing I would try and address is the social anxiety that I dealt with throughout life, which was especially bad when I was a kind of like a late teenager in my early 20s. The first thing I would say to him is most people don't actually care about you as much as you think. And that may sound harsh, and I'm not saying that his loved ones don't care about him, but what I'm saying is that strangers or people that you have interactions with socially aren't paying as much attention to you as you think they are. And the proof is in the way that you judge and see others. For me, I was never really judging anyone else that harshly, even if someone said something that didn't make sense or that they did something that I thought would have been embarrassing. I didn't stew on it. I didn't think about it forever and judge them harshly. But I assumed others were doing that to me, and that was just an immature approach, and it kind of contradicted itself. It really didn't make a lot of sense. So I would tell them, stop thinking that others are paying that much attention to you. The next bit of advice I would give would be based around dealing with those feelings of anxiety when they come up in a social setting. And for me, what I've found works really well is trying to just focus on myself less and focus more on what's happening externally. So if I'm at a party, rather than focusing on how I'm feeling inside or snowballing in my mind, I instead trying to focus on who I'm talking to, being quite present, or anything that's going on around me, whether that be the music, the visuals that are around me, or whatever. Just try and get out of my own head and focus on the environment a lot more. And the added bonus of that is that it makes your social interactions better. If you're having a conversation and you're not just having a war in your mind, but you're actually talking to someone and listening to them and engaging with them, it makes the interaction that much better. Now, by this point, I'm sure I'd be fighting my younger self to keep his attention, but the last thing I would tell him is to stop constantly comparing himself to others and try and be grateful for what he actually has. The habit of constant comparison really turned me into a bitter person who was not grateful for what he had and who felt like he was behind in life. I think everyone would agree that those feelings suck, and it can be quite confusing to feel ungrateful or feel dissatisfied when you have a lot of blessings in your life. But if you're always focusing on what you don't have rather than what you do have, Unfortunately, that's just the way that you're gonna feel. So the advice that I would give myself to get over those feelings would be to practice gratitude. This is something that actually really helped me out when I was trying to get myself out of depressive rut. But if I could go back in time, I would make sure that I started this practice a lot earlier. Then I would tell myself how to combat those feelings of being left behind. And the one thing I would say is you can't become like the person you want to be overnight. And now it sounds so obvious to me that it hurts, but back then I thought that radical change was possible. You know, you see everyone on Instagram or other social media that have these wild success stories, and you think that you should be able to do it too. And I had these unrealistic expectations that were just completely destroying my self-worth. So I would tell myself to lower the standards and take the small steps to become the person that you want to be and stop chasing radical change. And that's it. Those are the 3 lessons that I would tell my younger self, and I would hope that I would actually listen to them. They're the things that helped me, but I'd be curious to know what lessons you would tell yourself. So please leave a comment, and if you've experienced anything similar, I would love to hear it. I appreciate it as always, guys. Thank you for watching.